morning, Year 5. Here are your answers to yesterday. Oh, let's put them the other way around. I noticed that there's a little bit missing from these questions, but I'm sure you worked out what it was asking you to do. So there are your answers. And then the answers to that one. Now, I haven't put the answers for this one because I just wanted to talk you through it. Now, if you've done it, that is brilliant. You could just check that you did it correctly. If you haven't done it, it is worth us talking about it quickly. So, here's Jan. She says, a number with one decimal place is rounded to 28. What is the smallest possible number that she could be thinking of? And what is the largest possible number that she could be thinking of? So hopefully what you did was draw a number line. She's rounding to 28. Now, this time, so this is obviously a little bit of greater depth understanding here. So you, once you have, as you know, in school, we can question you and use different ways to extend your understanding. It's a bit more difficult when you're at home, but we'll try. So 28. So I'm going to, this time I'm going to put 28 in the middle, and then I'm going to put 29 and 27. Because I know that the answer, that some numbers that round to 28 are going to be less than 28, and some numbers that round to 28 are going to be more. I'm going to label the midpoints again, 27.5, 28.5. And then I'm going to think, well, at what point do I round to 28? Well, let's just move along the number line. Anywhere here is going to round to 27 because it's less than the midway point. Once I get to 27.5, I'm going to start rounding up to 28, aren't I? I'm going to keep rounding up to 28 all the way until I get just before 28.5. Because actually, once I get to 28.5, I'm going to round up to 29. Now, Jan's number has got one decimal place. So it must be the one before that, which is 28.4. So the number that Jan could be thinking of could be any of the numbers in between 27.5 and 28.4. This question is just asking us the smallest, 27.5, and the biggest, 28.4. But it could be anything in between. Okay, now we've gone through that, if you didn't have a go at number 2, you might want to pause and have a go. What I'll do is I will do the answers at the end of the video. Right, moving on today then. Here is your Fluent in 5 today. Pause and give yourselves 5 minutes to solve the problems. And here are your answers. I'm going to run through B with you because from having looked at the Fluent in 5 questions that have been handed back so far, we're still having a bit of difficulty here. So I'm just going to talk you through B. If you've got B right, you can go through this part of the video onto today's learning. Okay, so 5,394 multiplied by 27. Now, what you need to remember is when we're multiplying by a 2-digit number, what we're effectively doing is we're doing this number multiplied by 7 and multiplied by 20 and then adding the 2 together, okay? Multiplying by 7 we can do. That's nice and easy, okay? Because we know how to multiply by a single digit and hopefully we know our tables. So let's do that first. So we're going to ignore this 20 for a minute and we're just going to multiply by 7. 7 times 4 ones is 28 ones. Remember, I put the ones in and I put the tens underneath like that. 7 times 9 tens is 63 tens. Add those 2 tens, makes me 65 tens, which is 6 hundreds and 5 tens. 7 times 3 hundreds is 21 hundreds. Add those 6 hundreds there, gives me 27 hundreds or 2,700. And 7 times 5 thousands is 35 thousands. Add those 2, gives me 37,000. Okay, so 5,394 times 7 would be 37,758. Okay, now I get a little bit cross with these little numbers, so I'm just going to cross them out so they're not going to confuse me. Now, the next bit is the tricky bit. And when we were in school just before Christmas, we talked about how we could cheat a little bit on this one, and we could actually think, well, actually, we could times it by 2 and then make it all 10 times bigger, because that sounds a bit easier to do. So what you could do if you wanted to is actually do it separately. 5,394 times 2, then make it 10 times bigger, and then add it together. I'm going to show you what it looks like here. Now, because we're multiplying by 20, I'm going to say 2, because if we start saying 20 times 4 ones, 20 times 9 tens, 20 times, it gets ever so confusing. And what we've realised is it's quite hard for you to keep track of what you're doing. So we're going to say 2. Now, we know that's not a 2, it's 20, it's 2 tens. And we also know that if we make everything 10 times bigger, we shuffle the numbers along one, and we fill in any gaps with a 0. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to put my 0 in my ones, because that means all the numbers will have to shuffle along. Okay? And I'm going to say 2, but I'm going to keep sight of the idea that it's actually 20. 2 times 4 is 8. Can you see that because I put that 0 there, what it's actually done for me is it's already turned that into 80 rather than 8, because we know that 20 times 4 is 80. Okay? And I'm also going to say 2 times 9 here. Now, I know it's not 2 times 9. It's actually 2 tens times 9 tens. But let's say 2 times 9 so we don't get too confused with where we need to put each number. 2 times 9 is 18. Okay, so remember, I've carried this one over. I've put the 8 in. 2 times 3, again, I know it's not 2 times 3, but we're just saying it so that we don't trip over our words too much. 2 times 3 is 6, add that 1 is 7, and 2 times 5 is 10. Now, if I had done, and I'm going to do it over here to show you, 5,394 times 2, 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 9 tens is 18 tens, or 108 tens, 2 times 3 hundreds is 6 hundreds, add that 1 is 7 hundreds, 2 times 5 thousands is 10 thousands. I'd have got that. And then that's by 2, I want to make it 10 times bigger. I know, and I'm sure you know, that if I times it by 10, I move everything along one. And if I've got a gap at the end, I need to fill it in with a 0. Can you see how I've got that number? Okay, and then this is 5,394 times 7. This is 5,394 times 20. I'm going to add them together. Giving me the answer, 145,638. Now that was an awful lot to talk through, but I think it was worth it because I know that from your answers, those are the ones that we're still finding difficult. Okay, right, moving on then. So yesterday we were looking at rounding to the nearest whole number, and today we are looking at rounding to the nearest tenth. Good news is it works in exactly the same way as rounding to the nearest whole number, apart from we're using tenths and not wholes at either ends of our number line. Okay, so let's have a look at this one. Liam's height is 0.83 metres. Round 0.83 to the nearest tenth, or 1 decimal place. Okay, so that means the same thing. 1 decimal place means 1 digit after the decimal. Okay, they've done it here for you, but I'm just going to move that out of the way to show you how it looks. Okay, I'm going to write tenths at the top to remind us that's what we are rounding to today. And the number I'm rounding is 0.83. So exactly the same as yesterday. Because we're rounding to tenths, it's the tenths I want to look at. In this number, these are my tenths, 8 tenths. Okay, I'm actually going to put a box around all of that to show you that it's 0.8. And then it's 0.8 that goes this end of the number line. Exactly like yesterday, but this time, instead of putting a box around the holes, I've put a box around the holes and the tenths, because it's the tenths we're rounding to. Then, yesterday, I went a whole one, but because it's tenths, I'm going to go a tenth. So we've got 8 tenths, and the other end would be 9 tenths. And then the middle would be 8 tenths and 5 hundredths. Okay, 0.85, remember? You could say 0.80, 0.90 to help you. Then we find the number, 0.83 is going to be about there. Which is it closer to? Well, it's closer to that one. So 0.83 rounds to 0.8. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. Okay, number 8, round 1.75 to the nearest tenth. So this is one where it's exactly halfway between. So let's just do it my way like this so we can see. Here's our number, 1.75. It's the tenths we're interested in. This is the tenths. So I'm just going to take that whole bit, and that is going to tell me what to write this end of my number line. I'm going to go 1/10 more. Then I'm going to go midpoint. Okay, and it is exactly in the middle. We know the rule that when you're exactly in the middle, you round up. So 1.75 is 1.8 to the nearest tenth. Okay, this is exactly the same. They've just changed the language slightly for us. So this time it says round 2.98 to 1 decimal place. Okay, that just means 1 digit after the decimal point. So exactly the same. Let's do it. 2.98. This is my tenth, so I'm going to go like that. And that's what I'm going to write this end of my number line. A tenth more than 2.9, well, that's 2 whole ones and 9 tenths. The next one would be 2 whole ones and 10 tenths, which is actually 3 whole ones, isn't it? Halfway is 2.95. 2.98 is going to be about there. So 2.98, when rounded to the nearest tenth or 1 decimal place, is 3. Notice that the answer doesn't have to have a decimal place. It could have 0 as its decimal place, okay? Remember, you don't need that 0 because it doesn't add anything, but you could write it like that. Okay, so can you see that we're following exactly the same pattern as we did yesterday? There's 4 for you to try now. If I can get the page apart, there we go. There's 4 for you to try now. Oh, sorry, there's 3 for you to try now. So pause the screen, have a go at these 3, and then come back and I will have the answers for you. Right, there are your answers. I've done the number line so you can see how I got my answers as well. If you're a bit stuck, then do go back and relook at the video. And remember, I'm following exactly the same pattern. The only difference is, if you think to yesterday when we looked at my step-by-step somewhere here in this pile, it's exactly the same as this, apart from this time we're changing wholes for tenths, okay, each time, that's all. Okay, so let's have a look at what your task is today. Right, it's half of a practice today because the next second half is what we're going to cover tomorrow. So you've got a little bit of practice book to do, not very much. And then you have got some extensions here. So this one is a reasoning problem. So remember, when we're doing reasoning, we look at what, if someone has said something, and then we think about how we would explain it and we compare it. We've got a mystery number here to work out, and then we've got some extra problems. So this isn't necessarily going to be more tricky than finding the rounding to the nearest tenths. It's just putting your answers in a slightly different way and challenging you to think outside the box a bit. Keep the video rolling to see me go through the second problem from yesterday. So what you had to do was you had to round the throws to the nearest whole number, and then I added the ones up that I was given, 30. We know the total was 37, so Willow's number had to round to 7, so that had to be in this range. It could have been any of these. And then for this one, I haven't done this one, but it is true. Explain how you know, hopefully, was because you were saying that the smallest possible answer, the distance that Willow could have thrown was 6.5, which is more than Jaden, and the furthest she could have thrown is 7.4, which is less than Kieran. There you go then. I will be back tomorrow with your answers from today's practice.